Hi, I've got a question here that I'm going to answer that someone has sent me, and I'm going to answer it to the group. So the first thing I want to do is pull up that question and read you it, and then we're going to jump into a few things that I hope is going to help. Here's the question. When do the farmers, modern day farmers here in Israel, usually start harvesting the barley in Israel? Is it after the religious observance that will be April this year, or is it as soon as the barley is ripe in each of their own fields? This might be something that can prove March is actually the true Nisan. Let me interpret that as month one. The true month one this year, as farmers wouldn't wait until April if their fields were ripe now. Could you get proof of harvest going on now? Even so, I'm interested to know if the Jews have a certain time farmers must wait, or if that's Judaic religious folk reenacting, as they call it. Are farmers starting to harvest the barley in fields now? Okay, there's a second part of that I'll go into, but I'm going to address the first part. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what the farmers are doing right now, if they're harvesting barley or not. I would think they are not. From the fields I did see when I was in the South, I would think that they would not be ready. They do not keep any kind of a religious calendar that reflects any harvesting ritual or method. The farmers of today, by and large, Israel is secular, by and large. And the farmers of today plant their fields when they want the harvest to be ready. And when the harvest is ready, they cut their barley or cut their wheat. So you really can't go by modern farmers today and what they're doing on the land. There have been many years with the wild barley that I have seen the domestic wheat be ready before the wild barley, and I've seen the domestic wheat be ready after the wild barley. So domestic wheat in Israel is predominantly used for silage, which is animal feed. Instead of bales of hay, they feed their animals bales of wheat. So they're not looking to have a wave sheaf for wheat. Now, the religious group that we see harvesting particular fields in that ritualistic thing they do, what they literally are doing is they have chosen a wheat field that they're going to go out and harvest, and they're going to use it to produce their mehedrin, their super duper kosher, high-end unleavened bread. But stop right there. They're making that for the week of unleavened, attached to Passover, attached to barley when Israel came out of Egypt. So they're choosing a wheat grain, and they're going out and doing their ritualistic harvesting. They're doing it by hands with sickles, and then they're taking it home and they're making an unleavened wheat cracker, I'll call it matzah, for the week of unleavened, when indeed the item that we're supposed to consume for that week is unleavened barley. Let me go back and review that question, make sure I've covered everything. And then the comment goes on that could the ancient farmers harvest their fields before wave sheaf time? And the answer is no. The answer is the first fruits is different from the harvest. I want to go into some of these verses with you and show you that the Bible uses very specific terminology when it comes to a first fruits offering. And barley and wheat aren't the only first fruits. We have 7 species that make up the first fruits, and they were the acceptable offerings, first fruits offering in the temple. We gave a tithe of the increase of our seed. Let me show you something. Hang on. This is Matthew 23, 22. I'm going to try to screen share this to make it easier for you, if I can. I'm not going to be able to do that from there. Hang on. Let's do this one. Here we go. There we go. Matthew 23:23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. So you could pay a tithe on the increase of your seed. That's what we're commanded in Leviticus. But there were only 7 first fruits that were acceptable in the temple. So let's look at some of these verses on the first fruits to try to help you understand that a first fruit is much different than a harvest. So first of all, we're going to look at Deuteronomy 8:8. I'm going to have to do this every time. I guess I am. It says, a land of wheat and barley and vines, which is grape, and fig trees and pomegranate, a land of oil, olive, and honey, which, by the way, that's dates. I know there's a lot of discrepancy about whether it's bees' honey but I can prove it. It is dates. And we're going to go to 2 Chronicles. Oh, sorry. Gotta go back. 2 Chronicles 31:5. And as soon as the command came abroad, the children of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits of the corn, which is the barley and the wheat, the wine, the oil, and the honey, and all of the increase of the field, and the tithe of all things brought they in abundantly. Look at the same thing in Nehemiah, because this is going to show you that there's more than just barley and wheat. Okay, we'll just go 10:35. And to bring the first fruits of our ground and the first fruits of all the fruit of all the trees year by year into the house of the Lord. And then it goes on in 10:36. Also the firstborn of our sons and of our cattle, as was written in the law, and the firstlings of our herd and of our flocks, to bring to the house of the Lord, and to the priests that minister in the house of our God. So we had a very specific, I say we, stop right there. Doesn't mean anything, because I have to have a kinsman redeemer, and there's only one that can restore me to or redeem me from the curse of sin, and that is the Messiah. But I do say we a lot when I read the scripture, because I happen to be one of those individuals that married into the nation of Israel, a Jew, and I'm living in Israel. So when I read the Bible, I read it as a we, because the Torah said, regardless of whether we're looking at the Old Testament or the New Testament, okay, we all are part of the Commonwealth of Israel now. But when I read those words of the Old Testament specifically, I see a heritage that I inherited, I guess you could say, from my husband. So I look at the Old Testament and I say we, because of my physical situation, that I'm married to a Jew, that I'm becoming an Israeli citizen, and yes, beyond everything and above everything, because I belong to my kinsman redeemer, the Messiah of Israel. So when I say we, excuse me, I'm speaking about the history of it. So we were to bring in the first of our first fruits. Now, Exodus 23, and some of these verses y'all know, but I just want to show you the language of them. Exodus 23:19. The first, the reshit, of the first fruits, bikurim, of thy land. Okay, so now we know thy land, it's more than just the barley and the wheat, shall thou bring into the house of the Lord thy God. So first fruits is the Hebrew word reshit, and that's what Genesis is, bereshit, in the beginning. So this is the beginning, bikur. Now here's where it gets interesting. By the way, there's only a pronunciation difference between the first fruits of plants and the first fruits of animal. Bikur is the first fruits of plant. Bikor is the first fruits of animal and human. But we're going to look at Briggs Driver and Brown. It says, the first of the crops, fruit that ripened, was gathered and offered to God according to the ritual. And this says of Pentecost. When we look at the Strongs, it's more descriptive. The first fruits of the crop, hasty fruit. Okay, so this is not the harvest, the general harvest in a field. And my goodness, apple trees, orange trees, mango trees, pomegranate trees, trying to think of some common fruit. They don't all present themselves at the same time. They don't. That only happens in our generation because we have these brainiacs who hybridize everything so that it ripens perfectly in uniform, so they can pluck it before it's ripe and before it's full of its vitamins, and ship it halfway around the world and put it in the grocery stores. In God's kingdom, things don't ripen that way. Grow a home garden. You're not going to have every tomato on your tomato plant ripe in the same moment. This barley, this wild barley, it's like that. It's not all going to be ripe in the same moment. There is going to be hasty fruit in the field. Hang on, I want to show you something else. So I said some things earlier that about the first fruits of barley being as the first fruits among men, and Elohim says those that break the matrix, those that open the matrix of the womb. I can say that because bikur and bikor share the same root word. I want you to listen to what the etymological dictionary says. Here's what it says: force out, free productive elements. The first word under this root, initial forcing open the mother's womb. The second one, giving firstborn rights. The third one, forcing out. The fourth one, first fruits. The fifth one, for firstborn. And the sixth one is a young colt. So when I tell you that the first fruits opens the matrix of the year, it's because Elohim constructed the word to give us that meaning and that picture. It's the same root word. Hang on, I'm going to take you through some more things. So I've told you that the field is not all going to be ripe at the same time. We've talked about this a lot. We've talked about the knolls, the rises, the dips, the sways, the tilt of the field, that wild barley will present an early section of it. Listen to what Ezekiel 48:14 tells us. They shall not sell of it, neither exchange nor alienate. That means to pass over. That means to not recognize it. That word is abar, and it comes from that root word that we get erevit, we get erev, we get ivrit, we get all of these words that we're not to pass over the first fruits of the land. For it is holy unto Yehovah. I don't think it could be any more clear than that. I'm going to get you another verse. Okay, hang on. Just lost it. Let me see. 23. Okay, here we go. Isaiah 28:4. Let me share this. Sorry, I've been meaning to screen share and I just don't always do that, but I believe I am giving you the references so that you can look them up. So it's not really a big foul. It says I'm not plugged in. Cancel. There we go. Pop up. There we go. And the glorious beauty which is on the head of the fat valley. I see this every year. The glorious beauty shall be as a fading flower, as the hasty fruit. That word is bikur, the hasty fruit before the summer. And you've heard me talk about know what summer means and know what winter means. Guess what summer means? Kites. It shares the same etymology with the harvest, which when he that looketh upon it seeth it, while it is yet in his hand, and he eateth it up. So we're told that the first fruits are hasty. Does a hasty person usually arrive to an appointment maybe a little before time or right on schedule? Okay, we're talking about hasty barley and an acceptable field. So one of the things I struggle with is simply this. If the first fruits are holy, how are we handling them when we're inspecting the land? It's bothered me for some time, the manner that people charge through the land. Boing, I'm in Israel. Now I'm going to run like I don't know, a cat running from a dog, a highway from barley field to barley field, and use all this technical language and all these charts and all these acceptable fields that was constructed by whoever they were constructed by. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to declare the new year based on what I see. Has it been a holy process? Has it been a holy process? And if we've determined the first fruits in a field, then shouldn't we be thankful that Elohim's still providing the first fruits? And should we be simply going around and taking from Elohim's fields for our own purposes to prove a point? I'm not going to name anyone. That's not my intent to tarnish anyone. But I was asked for a certain thing that I couldn't give, and that was to go back to the area where the first fruits were determined, where I determined them, and to take all that barley and clean it and ground it and prove it's going to make a wave offering so that we can help other people get on the calendar. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to handle it like it's common. I'm not going to take the seeds that are there and decimate that area by trying to harvest them and leaving nothing to reseed itself. We don't have a lot of land left in Israel. We need housing. Israel's growing. And the farmers that keep flocks, they're being forced more and more into these KKL lands. And that's where the barley grows. And so the barley fields have become the grazing fields. And it's a race against time with the mama ewes and the mama nannies that have babies on the ground and they need to make milk. And God created them to eat the green grass and make lots of milk for their baby. It's a race against time to find the barley because the herds need, the flocks need the barley. So I think, in my opinion, that everyone needs to slow down and realize what they're handling. If Yeshua was the first fruits, 1 Corinthians 15, the first fruits from the dead, then we need to recognize when we have determined the first fruits in the land of Israel, who that represents. We need not to let it go by. Okay, obviously, if we're using the Messiah as an example, he was the hasty barley in a field that was ready before the rest of it. And as his shadow type, then when we go into Israel and we do any kind of harvesting to prove a point, we need to do it in a way that we have left something on the land that it will grow next year. So that's my heart today. I was truly really bothered by the request, and the lady that had sent me the question, I wanted just to address that. It bothers her that we're going to be keeping our Passover on this calendar during Purim, but I'm telling you. I'll keep the calendar, come to Israel and see Purim. It's nothing more than a glorified Halloween. Even the costumes are superheroes. And I mean, maybe not quite as demonic as you see the stuff in the United States for Halloween, but it has nothing to do with Mordecai and Esther. It has nothing to do with the story. By and large, it's just a time for a big party, parades, costumes, and getting drunk. So you ask me if I feel bad that my Pesach will be on their Feast of Esther. No, not in the least. It does not bother me. So that was a question, and that's the things that's been rolling around in me. It's not, obviously for me, it's not just running down the highway and trying to find all the barley and make a quick decision and then leave the country. This is my home, and this is where Elohim still displays his calendar. And since he does display his calendar, and since it was always to have represented his Messiah as the Reshit, hasty fruit, the Reshit, hasty fruit, then we need to handle it with a little bit more respect and dignity maybe than we have in the past, and recognize it and not pass over it. Thanks for watching.